Welcome. I'd like to call the local planning agency meeting for City of Bonita Springs, May 16th, 2024 to order. Please rise for an invocation. Dear Lord, we seek your divine blessings on the brave men and women in our community who serve as police, firefighters, and paramedics. Grant them courage in the face of danger, wisdom when they must make quick decisions, strength when they are weary, and a heart of compassion in every deed. Shield them from harm and bring them safely home to their families when duty has ended. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Pardon me, Steve, maybe I'll take a roll call, make sure everyone's here. I say it's not on the agenda.
Okay.
Vice Chairman Lohan.
Here.
Member Lombardo.
Here.
Member Colapietro.
Here.
Member Doogie.
Here.
Member Townsend.
Here.
Member Maturo. And he is absent and he asked to be excused. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve the approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have a question for the city attorney, if we should hear public comments now or wait until after the presentations.
Because we have I don't want to risk any confusion, my recommendation would be that we have public comment during each of the items. So you can go ahead and push, and then if there's any generic public comment not related to the items, we can push that to after the meeting, just to make sure that people comment at the appropriate time.
Okay, well, I'm going to refer to the clerk for the next item.
So that takes us to item 6A. And we'll ask staff will staff be introducing this item?
Just as, because this is a legislative item, there's no swearing in on this item at all. This item is simply a processing and review for compliance with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Mike Fegon with Community Development for the record. I'm the senior planner for the city. I'm going to give a brief introduction of why we're all here today and then turn it over to the applicant to go ahead and provide a bit more detail on the request. So this is a request to amend the future land use map. And just to sort of give you a little bit of a background of what that means, when the city has long-range planning initiatives that sort of help to demonstrate and provide for growth for the city over the long term. And there's a map associated with that long-term planning called the future land use map. And it does just what it says. It helps to plot out what the future land use of these properties are supposed to be. And what they're going to be requesting is a change from what they currently have as a Lee County category to a Bonita Springs category, and one that they feel is more appropriate than what the current designation is. And along with that, they also want to change some of the language of that proposed category. It's called the Urban Fringe Community District. It's a district that allows you to have residential uses and limited commercial uses as well. But there's some changes to that language that they also wanted to go ahead and request. So all of that is in your staff report. It's in the application backup. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alexis and her team to present the case for the applicant.
Thank you. Good morning, Alexis Crespo. I'm Vice President of Planning with RVI Planning and Landscape Architecture. It's a pleasure to be before you this morning. Joining me today are actually several members of the Seagate Development Group, who is the landowner as well as the applicant and proposed developer of the property. That includes James Nolf, Matt and Bill Price, Tim Bile, and Keith Norton. So they're all here to help in the presentation and assist with questions on the plan for the property. Neil Montgomery is the Land Use Counsel. Josie Medina is here and has done the heavy lift on the planning application before you. Jackie LaRock is the professional engineer who's done the stormwater management obtained the water management permit for the property, and she's with Atwell. Christian Casey has performed the environmental studies on the site. He's also with Atwell. Yuri Baikal is a professional engineer with TR Transportation, performed the traffic studies. Unfortunately, David Brown, our hydrologist, was not able to be here today, so I'll be kind of pinch hitting for him during our presentation, but his full and detailed surface and groundwater analysis was included in your staff report and backup package. The subject property is outlined in yellow on your screen. It's just over 200 acres in size. It is located both within the city of Bonita Springs, partially annexed into the city, and then some of the property does remain in Lee County. We would like to bring the entire property into the city of Bonita Springs. We think that's a benefit to the city, as I will walk through. The property has substantial frontage along Bonita Beach Road, a 4-laned arterial roadway. The site, as we'll walk through in detail, is heavily impacted due to various mining activities over the years. You can see the large mining lakes. You can also see where clearing has occurred and development has occurred on the site along the frontage. Seagate, we don't always get the benefit of this situation either as the city or myself as a consultant, but we are working for the property owner. They have purchased the vast majority of the property. They've owned it for 4 years now as they work through site design and permitting with our firm. There are 2 parcels along the frontage that are under contract. Those property owners structured it where they would sell when the permits from the city were obtained, but again, the vast majority of the property is owned by Seagate. The request, as Mike walked you through very well, is both a map change as well as a text change to make some tweaks to your urban community or urban fringe future land use category. As he noted, the property was partially annexed into the city and it never obtained a city future land use category. Therefore, it has the legacy Lee County future land use of DRGR and wetlands on the property today. So certainly to incorporate the property fully into the city, we would need to work with the city's regulatory framework. We are seeking a city category as well as a city zoning district. So we would be bringing the upland areas proposed for development into your urban fringe category, which is a low density mixed use category applicable to Bonita National and Valencia at the eastern terminus of Bonita Beach Road. We would convert the wetlands to resource protection, which is the city's, for all intents and purposes, wetland category. It's where you place lands that are going to be preserved in perpetuity. In terms of the modifications to those policies, I'll walk you through them. One of them is we're doing lower density than this category allows, which I hope eases some concerns of the folks in the room, but I'll walk you through those changes in this presentation. The effect of the future land use map change we're proposing is to allow for the development of a predominantly residential community, a maximum of 388 dwelling units, which is below 2 units per acre, as well as a neighborhood commercial component at 39,500 square foot of proposed uses. In previous neighborhood meetings, we heard concerns about certain uses such as gas station. We've omitted those from the companion zoning, which we understand this is about the comp plan today, but I think for informational purposes for folks in the room, it's important to touch on some of those items. As noted, we've concurrently filed that application so that the applications would run together, and all these items we're committing to would be valid along with the comprehensive plan change, as well as the annexations we've requested. This map is the map that demonstrates what is within the city, which is shown in the yellow, and then the lands retained in Lee County currently are not shaded. You can see there's a mining pit on the east side of the property that is still in Lee County and approved for mining uses. We believe incorporating the entirety of this property into the city as opposed to trying to de-annex into the county is a clear benefit to the city of Bonita Springs. Based on where it's located, this property functions as part of the city. It's going to put traffic onto Bonita Beach Road. We think paying our impact fees to the city would be a benefit to everyone overall. Also, the increased tax base would be the benefit of the city and not the county. And then ultimately, it provides the city with discretion over the permit process. the details of the zoning, as those would all go before City Council instead of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. In many cases, too, the city has heightened standards of development and that we'd also have to abide by, as opposed to lower standards in Lee County. With that, I'm going to turn over to James Nolf to just give a few words on Seagate's vision for the property.
Hi, good morning. Thanks, Alexis. My name is James Nolf. I'm president and partner at Seagate Development Group. We're a local real estate development company. My partners here behind me, Bill Price and Matt Price, we founded the company 9 years ago, which is hard to believe. We have nearly 300 employees at this time. We have close to $2 billion worth of property that's currently being developed in Lee and Collier County. We have a reputation of being best in class. That's the type of real estate that we like to develop. We're local, again, employing families here, building our communities. We're proud of the projects that we've completed. I'll just mention a few of those projects here today to kind of give you a taste and flavor of what we do. Alexis had mentioned we have a reputation of lower density type properties, but best in class. So we've developed Hilltide Estates in Boca Grande, purchased 10 acres. We developed that into 19 single-family homes. We're a preferred builder in Quail West. We're out of inventory there as the market has been very strong over the last couple of years. We've developed and built in Tallis Park. We've developed and built Palisades, which we just opened in Naples. Completed Windward Isle, another development project in Naples. Esplanade Lake Club, Rivanna Lakes, Silver Oak is a new community for us, and Opastone. So again, best-in-class properties. We're local. My business partner and I both live in Quail West, so very familiar with being part of this community. And we're very proud of the future of Rivanna Lakes. This will be a legacy property for us. We're very excited about developing it, and we're very excited about what the finished product will be when it's completed. We're very transparent, open. We'll be here afterwards to answer questions. We always welcome public input. We like to be mindful and a good neighbor through development, and we have a reputation in doing so. Most of the properties that you've seen here on the screen, we have a reputation of closing on those properties and then entitling them and then building. So we look forward to continuing that here. Just a little taste and flavor. These are some of the type of homes that we build. The home on the left of the screen is in Quail West. That home was just completed. You can see the level of landscaping. That landscaping is probably 3 weeks old when the photo was taken. The top right was Esplanade Lake Club. Again, photo taken right after landscape install. And the bottom right is Palisades, a brand new community. So you can see the type of reputation we have in building and the high quality finish and standards. We look forward to being part of the community. Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Neil Montgomery. I'm here to give you a little bit of history about the DRGR in the county. First off, I want to let you know that there is a policy in your comp plan, policy 1.1.10.3, that deals with annexed areas. And what it says essentially is what the Florida statute says. And that's when property is annexed into a municipality like the city of Bonita Springs, it comes in with the county land use category and the county land development regulations. So right now, all of the property has been or will be annexed. So it all falls under the caption of annexed properties. So it's all under the county regulations at the present time. So what we're here to do is to, as Mike Fion and Alexis have indicated, is to move forward with obtaining a city future land use category, which would then subject the property also to the city's land development regulations. There's been a lot of discussion over time about the DRGR category. That category was created by the county, and it was created because there was a rule called 9J5, which had a kind of a draconian impact on all local governments in terms of their comp planning. And it required a very stringent population accommodation. So there were areas in the county like this area and like the property to the south that was in rural or open lands that got changed into DRGR to limit density. In 2011, then Governor Scott realized that part of the Great Recession had been caused by those draconian rules, so 9J5 was eliminated. So part of the density reduction part was to comply with a rule that's not in effect anymore. The other part was the groundwater resource. At the time when this was created, the county, the cities, didn't have a very good idea of where their water was coming from. They knew that a lot of it was coming from the superficial aquifer, so they thought, we gotta save all this land because we might need it for our water because we don't know where it's coming from. A lot of things have happened since then. One is the Water Management District was required by the legislature to do water supply plans. It's like, okay, we're not doing things that way. We're gonna let the agency that knows where our water is coming from work with local governments and utilities to come up with a water supply plan. And we're gonna make the district adopt that, and then we're gonna make the local governments adopt that into their comprehensive plan. And since Mr. Rooney's been your city attorney, he's been very efficient about making sure that happens. So the Lower West Coast Water Supply Plan is adopted into the city's comp plan, so you do know where your water is coming from. So that kind of addresses both the DR and the GR aspects. Right now, the property under the county's DRGR can have mining. The city's DRGR doesn't allow mining, but historically, that's been one of the most favored uses because it generates a reasonable use of the property. The city, from what I've gleaned, doesn't really want to perpetuate mining in the city, so they've resolved some issues with other existing mines and are working towards phasing those out. So that's why we're here today. We think the property is no longer suited, as Alexis and the team are going to share with you, for DRGR. It needs to be brought into the city, and it needs to be brought into an appropriate category. This is the map that was adopted when the DRGR was done, and I would tell you that the sections, Palmyra, Bonita National, all those were originally placed in the DRGR. And Gargiulo, Billy Don Graham, for those of you who've been around a while, Kent Manley owns that property, and went to the county and said, wait a minute, there's no water for utilities here, we're pumping it all. So what are you doing? And the county commission told them, don't worry, we just have to do this to make GCA happy. You come back in, we'll fix it. Well, they did come back in and fix it. It just wasn't quite as easy as the commission led them to believe. So those properties that were originally in the DRGR are now the communities that I'm assuming a lot of these folks live in. So here we can see the change based on the settlement agreement, and you can see what the properties south of the road are. So all those properties that are pink and yellow were placed by the county because of the settlement agreement in the DRGR, but they've been fixed. So we're just coming in to ask to get this property fixed as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Alexis.
Thank you, Neil. Again, Alexis Crespo with RBI. We have probably, we'll be wrapped by 10, just for folks in the room and planning purposes. We should be able to get through our slides in that amount of time. So Neil's kind of touched on the context. We want to lay some of that groundwork here in terms of where the property is located. We are on the north side of Bonita Beach Road. The south side of the road is well developed with beautiful master plan communities, including Worthington at 799 units, Palmyra, which has both commercial uses and residential permitted. Further east is Village Walk. Then we have the newer communities of Valencia and Bonita National at the far terminus of Bonita Beach Road. So the southern portion of the road is well developed. As you move towards the interstate, you have the commercial and light industrial uses. That's where our offices are located behind Publix. The north side of the road is also developing as you move westward or eastward from the interstate. There's vacant lands, but they have been entitled for a mix of commercial and mixed-use projects. You have the big Midtown project now under construction at Bonita Grand and Bonita Beach Road on the west side of that intersection. And then as you move past Racetrack, you have lands that are in Lee County that are also slowly converting because there's infrastructure in this area. It's where you have urban services, you have high levels of development on the south side of the road. The north side logically would build off that growth pattern. So There's a townhome community permitted by Lee County. It was not annexed into the city, unlike our property, but so that's being developed now. And then there's a few parcels between our site and that future development that are a mix of RV park, farm worker housing, really heavily impacted uses. And our property really is the eastern edge of those impacted lands on Bonita Beach Road. Everything further east of us is for the most part committed as permanent public preserve areas, which we'll show you in a future slide. So this would really is the last bookend piece of impacted property on the north side of the roadway that doesn't have an urban category currently. In terms of that infrastructure, again, significant frontage on Bonita Beach Road, an arterial roadway. We've got proximity to I-75, a regional thoroughfare, as well as the Logan extension, which is providing a great network and connectivity for folks wanting to head south. We do have water and sewer directly along the frontage of this property, which is also a driver of development. And you want to locate property where you have access to these arterial levels of roads, as well as where you have access to utilities and capacity by the provider, which is the case for this site. We have water mains ranging from 12 to 16 inches aside, which is a substantial piece of infrastructure, as well as sewer lines up in the front of the property. We are proximate to a BSU water plant that has given us a letter of availability for that service, and we're also very close to fire and EMS services. So well located on a clear path of growth within the city limits. From a future land use context, you'll note the pink is where Palmyra, Village Walk, and Worthington, that's the future land use category they're located in, which is moderate density mixed use plan development. So all those properties were zoned PD to comply with this future land use. This allows 6 units per acre, as well as commercial uses. When we initially started this application, we thought it's pink on the south side, let's make it pink on the top. That makes good sense, right? From just a natural, logical progression of the future land use. However, working with staff over several years, and really Seagate also reducing their density steadily as they developed the site plans, we realized that we did not need to request such a high density category, and that's why we're requesting the yellow category, which applies to Valencia and Bonita National, and that's the urban fringe category, which allows a maximum density of 2.77 units per acre. And so that is the context. On the north side of the road, you'll see varying shades of green. Those are, again, mostly Lee County lands that are in DRGR and wetland categories. The DRGR being in the gray, and then the wetland and conservation being in the green. When you look at it from a big picture standpoint, I think this is really the crux of our request to you today. You can see the DRGR that's within the city limits. This is an excerpt of the city's future land use map. DRGR is shown in gray. So that's your big chunk on Bonita Grand Drive as you move north of Bonita Beach Road up to the city limits. So that is where your cluster of DRGR lands are from a city standpoint. We are an isolated island of Lee County DRGR directly on Bonita Beach Road on an arterial roadway, unlike Bonita Grand. And so we do see our property as different from those other DRGR lands. We do see this property based on geographic location, land use, development along the corridor, available infrastructure to be different from your cluster of DRGR lands to the north and west of our site. This is the only property in the city on Bonita Beach Road that has a DRGR designation. And I would caveat that to the east of Bonita Grand. This is an important slide, and I think we have a little bit more on this later, but it is important to protect pristine lands that are proximate to other areas to our north in Lee County and the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. The areas in green on this slide are owned by either Lee County, the Water Management District, or other state agencies. So these lands in green are permanently committed as conservation by governmental entities, therefore highly, highly unlikely to ever convert to development. this is a good thing. This protects areas that are connected and that have been relatively undeveloped. If you look at our site in relation to that, you can see mining activity, you can see, and you'll hear from Christian, low quality environmental habitat and areas that will actually be enhanced through the proposed development program. So we do think the state, the county, the city has done a good job of preserving the right areas within both the county and the city, providing large connected areas, but we would submit that this impacted site and the lands really to our west are not a part of that pristine area, contributing to large-scale preservation or water quality and groundwater. To further that point, 37 acres of the site that are still in Lee County, they have not been annexed in yet, are zoned industrial plan development. This is directly across from the San Remo portion of Palmyra. This was a plan development approval dating back to 2001. It's still active. Lee County's PDs do not expire like they do in the city. Mining and blasting is permitted, and only about 10 acres of that mine has been excavated. Seagate is not actively excavating it, but there is permission in place from a zoning standpoint from Lee County to continue mining and blasting on the site. And we certainly submit to you that allowing for a master plan community with 55% open space and the other aspects we'll walk you through would be a far better use of the land and far more compatible with our neighbors than that existing entitlement. Our map request is in your staff report. We are again requesting the urban fringe community, which is further to our east and applies to the Bonita National and Valencia properties. This allows for a lower density than the moderate density future land use in the pink to our south. So it would allow for a logical transition of stepping down the density as you go north of Bonita Beach Road. We're stepping down our density, and then further north of the Kiel Canal, we enter into the public preserve land. So this allows for a transition of development in a way that allows for development of an impacted site while also acknowledging its interfacing with environmentally protected areas. In terms of our text amendments, a lot of it is housekeeping type stuff. When this future land use category, urban fringe, was created, it was only applicable to the properties I've mentioned. So we had to increase, and the acreage was documented in your comprehensive plan, so we had to bump up the acreage in order to allow our property to go into the category. So just acknowledging that the acreage within the category would increase upon adoption of the amendment. We also work closely with staff on including a commercial component that would, it's on less than 5 acres of the site, but that would provide a local place for people to get maybe a jug of milk, pick up their dry cleaning, visit a UPS store, some of those daily trips that are currently going all the way down west on Bonita Beach Road, and providing some midpoint shopping along the corridor would be helpful to the communities on the south side. So due to that commercial component, we did request an FAR of 0.67, and that had to be changed in the comprehensive plan. We also had to tweak some policies about the stormwater management lake. There's lots of detailed discussion in your comprehensive plan about lake treatment in the urban fringe community. We are encumbered by existing mining lakes that don't have really sinuous shorelines. They're mined, so they're a little bit hard-edged. So our proposal is to enhance the littoral plantings to offset the non-sinuous nature of the lakes, to still provide great habitat along the shoreline and meet the intent of the sinuosity in the lakes. And then lastly, we provided text changes to address our specific buffering requirements. You'll see we're proposing a 130-foot setback / buffer on the northern side of the property where we interface with the Kiel Canal. The intent there again is to stop development, to provide ample transition to public preserve lands to the north. It also provides more pervious open space areas for water management purposes should the canal overflow as it likely did in Irma. This is additional undeveloped green space within our project that can accept more water, and it can percolate instead of sheet flow across more pervious areas. So we thought that was a good benefit. We've also incorporated a public trail into that 130-foot buffer setback for the benefit of the public. And then on our eastern edge, we're proposing an alternative buffer, which would be 40-foot wide with opaque wall to, again, interface better with the preserve areas. This is our companion PD master concept plan. This would be a binding plan that would be adopted concurrent with the comp plan, as we want our zoning and comp plan to go before council at the same time. We know you don't get the benefit of the zoning details since you're the LPA. We also know there were going to be folks here that were very curious about the specific development plans, so we wanted to show you this illustrative version of our master concept plan. We hope that the large green space pops out at you. We have 55% open space within the project. That's 40% is required by your code, so we've far exceeded the open space. 43 acres of that is preserve areas. We've located the preserve areas, first of all, where the highest quality, best preserve is on the site, which is along the frontage of Bonita Beach Road. So that provides a dual impact of both environmental benefit by getting the best preserved lands under permanent preservation, but also providing Palmyra, all the folks that travel along Bonita Beach Road that live to our south, really nice view sheds that should not dramatically change post-development. Those dimensions are 160 feet of buffer preserve between the road and those purple development tracks. And then the larger area further east of that, that's, I believe, 800 to 900 feet of just solid preserve area where there's not going to be visible development from the roadway. And then lastly, even our commercial parcel, the best wetlands were along that frontage. So we preserved the commercial frontage along the Bonita Beach Road, which is very rare. Usually folks want the commercial super visible from the road to catch the pass-by traffic, but due to the environmental permitting, that was the best choice for the property. And so we want to assure folks here today that it's going to have a lot of open space, and a lot of that open space is going to be within that public view shed along the road. You'll also notice the mining lakes incorporated into the water management system. This is going to allow for rehydration and achieve some of the groundwater resource goals in the comprehensive plan. And they'll also provide great, nice view sheds for future residents. And the pink areas are on-site recreational amenity. We wanted to locate that far away from our neighbors. It's right in the center of the site so that there would be no noise or light impacts from that. The yellow tracks are intended as a single family product, whereas the purple would be attached villa product. That is the current plan of the applicant. And again, on the eastern edge would be approximately 5 acres of commercial to provide daily goods and services. Our access points do align with the Palmyra access points. This was in working with your transportation staff as well as DOT to ensure the safest ingress egress. And at the zoning stage, we do a pretty high level traffic study. We are going to talk about traffic today, but at the DO stage is where we specify where the turn lanes are and any modifications and enhancements to the roadway. But as Yuri will tell you, there is adequate capacity. So before I turn it over to our environmental consultant, I just want to recap. We are consistent with the intent of the urban fringe future land use category. We provide for the mix of uses encouraged under the category. We are under the base density. We actually had to modify the density to go lower than what is allowed in that category today. It's an appropriate mix of uses. We filed the concurrent PD rezoning as prescribed by the policies. We have a clustered development footprint that maximizes preservation of the highest quality preserve areas and wetland on the site. And based upon the urban levels of infrastructure we've shown you, we also meet the sub-policies related to eliminating urban sprawl. This is a highly developed corridor, and the site has adequate services for the proposed density and intensity. With that, I'll turn it over to Christian Casey to briefly touch on the environmental. Thank you.
Good morning, Christian Casey, environmental consultant with Atwell. The existing site consists primarily of disturbed land, pine flatwoods, and low-quality wetlands that have been invaded by exotics. The majority of the site has been disturbed by agricultural, mining, and residential activities. The development plan was designed to preserve the highest quality wetlands along the western portion of the property and Bonita Beach Road, while impacting the previously disturbed portions of the site. A protected species survey was conducted December 2021. During the survey, no species listed by either the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission or the United States Fish and Wildlife Service were found on site. To identify if Florida bonita bats were utilizing the site, an acoustic survey was conducted October 2022 through January 2023. The survey concluded that Florida bonita bats were not utilizing this property for nesting or foraging. All wildlife surveys conducted concluded that listed species were not utilizing the property. The South Florida Water Management District has extensively reviewed the proposed development footprint and has issued environmental resource permits. This project has met all preservation and protected species criteria. In addition, if the site is improved consistent with the ERP and the current exotic vegetation is removed, exotic vegetative species and impacts through seed dispersal will be minimized to off-site properties, including the neighboring government-owned preserves. I'll bring up Jackie LaRocque. Thank you.
Good morning, Jackie LaRocque, professional engineer with Atwell. So we're going to talk today about infrastructure. Alexis already hit on it, and this is the type of development where we do have existing infrastructure. We're not bringing water and sewer to the site. It is already there. It's accessible on Bonita Beach Road. We've already had pre-apps with BSU. We have letters of availability from them, so it is there. It's a 12 to 16 inch water main along our frontage. We've got a 16 inch force main on the south side. We are less than 2 miles from a fire station, so this is the ideal project for this conversion because of where the infrastructure is. For stormwater, as Casey just mentioned, we do have our ERP already, so we've gone through that extensive permitting process with them. We went through all that. We've demonstrated that we follow all the rules and criteria for the state. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that stormwater means. So our outfall is to the north. We're going to discharge our stormwater into the Kiel Canal, take it away from the neighbors to the south, discharge it to the north. Our stormwater management system, the way it operates, right, is you have the rainfall, we collect it, we send it through the roadways, through pipes, into the ponds. We treat it, we clean the water, and then we slowly discharge it at a controlled rate. And so it's not a free-for-all discharge. It is a very slowed, controlled rate per the water management state and local agency criteria. What will happen is we build perimeter berms so we contain all of our water on our property. Don't let any water discharge off that's not permitted. And with that, I'll have Yuri come up.
Good morning. For the record, Yuri Baika with TR Transportation Consultants. I will briefly talk about the transportation impacts of this project. But the first point I want to mention is that our access will be directly to Bonita Beach Road, which is a Lee County maintained arterial roadway that borders the site to the south. And so this project will have adequate access to Bonita Beach Road, and those project driveways will be designed consistent with Lee County criteria and regulations. As previously mentioned, we are also proposing a mixed-use project on this property, which includes a commercial component. And the commercial component is important to this project as it basically provides a commercial shopping opportunity to the surrounding residential neighborhoods, as well as to the future residents of this neighborhood, which will basically reduce the vehicles' miles traveled along the surrounding roadway network and along Bonita Beach Road corridor. As part of our traffic analysis, we prepared what we like to call a 10,000-foot view level of service analysis at this time. Our analysis was conducted based on the worst-case scenario of development on the subject property, which included up to 388 dwelling units and a commercial component. And the results of our level of service analysis, which was completed consistent with the City of Bonita Springs traffic study guidelines for comprehensive plan amendment applications, indicate that this proposed amendment will not cause any roadways to operate below the adopted level of service standards. Now, Another important point I want to mention is that we're still in a comprehensive plan amendment stage. We still have to go through a rezoning process, which will require another traffic study to be prepared. And after that, we have to go through the development order process, which will require another traffic study to be prepared, which will get into nitty-gritty details of what the required improvements will be required along Bonita Beach Road and our project driveways. So again, I just want to emphasize there's still a long process to go before this project is approved for any vertical development. We still have plenty more traffic analysis to do. And that concludes my part of the presentation.
All right, we're getting close to wrapping up. Neil asked me to, because David Brown was here, I abridged what we were gonna present, but she wanted to touch on a couple of key points about the groundwater, because at the end of the day, this is a request to get out of DRGR, so we wanted to, I'm gonna have to skip around a little bit, but what David's report indicates, and Neil, I'm gonna be informal here and ask you to help if I misstate this, but our area of the DRGR is very different than that large cluster you have to the northwest of us. This area was heavily impacted by improvements to the water management system, the Keel Canal, Terry Street, all these different improvements in the area cut off the water flows and reduced this property accepting water and being a true source of groundwater recharge. So we are different in that we are south of that Keel Canal and had an obstruction of the just natural hydrological patterns that had made this area in decades earlier more of an actual recharge site. So that impact did occur. And you can see through his aerials, all this contained in the report, that Terry Street had a lot to do with that as well in terms of cutting off those flows by the construction of that east-west corridor and severed a lot of the flows in the area. This slide shows from a hydrological standpoint how the Keel Canal actually lowers the surface water there. It intercepts overland surface water flows originating from the north and depresses groundwater levels in the water table aquifer in proximity to the canal's reach, which obviously we abut the canal and are therefore directly affected by that. As a result of the land use and hydrological disturbances by the roadways and the canal, the site is now highly disturbed. It's a hydric disturbed pine, cypress, but just the vegetation on the site demonstrates the levels of impact and the fact that this area was basically dewatered by a lot of the historical improvements in the area. I'm gonna kind of jump back up to his summary. Neil, was that?
Yeah, it's your very last slide. This one.
Well, I put those back up, so I'll hit a summary. From what you've heard today through the on-site preserves, the mitigation we're going to have to do on-site to enhance some of those low-quality preserve areas, the use of the lime rock mining pits as stormwater management lakes to rehydrate these areas, restore flows into the project through our sensitive site design that has been approved by the Water Management District. It is our submission that we will take this heavily impacted site that's doing nothing from an environmental standpoint for the area, very little from a surface water management standpoint from the area, and improve all those things about the property to really have it be a true enhancement, not only to surface water in terms of water quality, but also the groundwater recharge that can occur through our proposed stormwater management design. So really, the summation of it is the site's not functioning as DRGR because of the impacts, and through the permitting we've done with the agencies and the design, we're actually improving it from both a water management and environmental standpoint. The staff report outlines different goals, objectives, and policies from your comprehensive plan. I won't belabor this, we've been talking a while, but we do rely upon our analysis attached to the staff report as well as staff's analysis that this is consistent with the urban fringe community intent. We would submit this is not consistent with the policies related to DRGR based on the function of the property. This will provide for housing and a mix of housing types. The infrastructure exists to service the property, and we are in compliance with your conservation goals in terms of the environmental protection and surface water design. We've also, through our zoning, proposed water quality monitoring and other protections. We are in agreement with your staff that this is ultimately a policy decision in terms of it is DRGR. We would submit, again, we are this isolated pocket of Lee County DRGR and very different from the rest of the city's DRGR in terms of geography, infrastructure, and just location along Bonita Beach Road corridor. We are in agreement that to take this comprehensive plan amendment up, the zoning is very important to that, to provide assurances to the community, and so that's why we ran those applications together. And we're in agreement that the site has been heavily impacted by the existing permitted mining activities on the property. There was a note about potentially reducing demand for housing in downtown Bonita and how, you know, new development could impact the success of downtown, and that's a general note of, you know, any new rooftops going up is providing more supplied housing. We would just submit based on the Seagate ownership, their intended development program. The buyer for a condo downtown is a very different buyer than someone who's going to look for this community for housing. It's just a completely different housing type that we're proposing to not draw away from that. We also agree with staff that the provision of a small neighborhood center can not only assist with congestion on Bonita Beach Road for our residents by allowing them a quick place to get their daily goods and services, but also other folks that are driving 3 and 4 miles west to get some of those needs. We want to just re-summarize that there is adequate protections through the state, city, and county-owned lands that's to the north of the property, which are north of that Kiel Canal and are bona fide pristine environmental preserve areas and provide connectivity. Our site is not consistent with how those lands function. The project will provide for a compatible, low-density, predominantly residential community with a quality developer. We have public enhancements incorporated into the proposal, not only in our surface water monitoring, stormwater management design, but also our public trail along the Kiel Canal, which could potentially connect into other trail systems by the state agencies. We've demonstrated the environmental benefits of the proposal, including significant high-quality preserves along Bonita Beach Road, open space along the Kiel Canal to provide additional open space and appropriate buffering between our neighbors. And as Jackie covered, we have a fully permitted stormwater management system that meets all water storage and quality requirements. And through the incorporation of the lakes will really enhance the groundwater resources in the area. So to conclude, it is in my expert opinion that this comprehensive plan amendment is consistent with the Bonita Springs Comprehensive Plan. It is consistent with Florida Statutes Chapter 163. It will provide for the compatibility, the location of new growth where infrastructure exists, and all those goals and objectives and policies that guide applications such as this. And I asked Mike if I should do this, but I want to, again, just differentiate ourselves from other proposals that have come before you that are in the northwest portion of the DRGR area. The Saphira project is on a 2-lane substandard roadway. They failed to address their flooding issues through their applications. This is all from the judgment summary that came out. I think the Rivanna plan, we've shown you that we have addressed a detailed stormwater management design that the state has accepted. It was noted in the lawsuit that their application failed to provide for appropriate planning analysis related to compatibility with the surrounding lands, infrastructure, environmental resources. Our application has addressed these items. We are lower density than our neighbors to the south. We provide for that transition. We've demonstrated capacity of all required infrastructure to support the project. Traffic concerns was a big item with Saphira. We are on a 4-lane arterial roadway and have direct access to an arterial road, which puts us in a very different situation. And lastly, we feel that we will not detract from the success of the downtown because we are proposing just a very different community than the housing types that will be developed in the downtown area. So with that, we do appreciate your attention for our presentation, and we're here to answer questions, or if you'd like to hear from the public, we would just request the ability to readdress any issues following public comment.
Anybody like up here have any questions?
Not at the moment.
Not at this point.
Okay, I guess we call for,
I've got a question.
Staff report?
yeah, okay, excuse me.
What will be the average price point for these homes?
I will defer to Seagate.
So obviously, we're early in design and product here. I would say anticipating starting price in probably the 2 million range, 2 to 6 million range is just speculation at this point. We are a custom home builder, so we'd have the ability to sell a lot and customize, and then at that point, it's the client's decision on budget.
Thank you.
We'll hear the staff report.
Good morning again, everybody. Mike Fegon with Community Development for the record. I'll give the staff presentation on this. I'm going to be a bit more brief than the applicant was in the staff presentation, mainly because it is the applicant's burden to justify this change and not necessarily on the staff. So one of the things that you noticed when you read through the staff report is that there was not a concrete recommendation provided one way or the other by staff, and that is because based on the scope of this change and based on the history, some of which you heard about from the applicant, some of which I'll also fill in my presentation, because of that, it really comes down to a strategic policy decision by the city as to whether or not a change of this scope is ultimately appropriate. So that's why you don't see a concrete recommendation. So what I'm going to walk you through is, some of it will be repetition, just going to present some of the facts of the case. If you have any questions or have any need for additional clarification, I'm here. The review team is here. We have David Theriak, staff counsel, attending virtually. Tom Ross, traffic engineer, also attending virtually. But I'm here. The applicant's team is here to answer any questions or provide additional clarifications. And again, some of the review team that we just talked about. This is an application that came to us back in 2020, so it's not a fast-moving process that we have here when it comes to comprehensive plan reviews. Typically doesn't take this long, but that's to say that, you know, the application was put through its paces. There were a lot of questions asked. There was a lot of back and forth. If you saw the initial submittal and the initial request, it's pretty night and day from what you're seeing now, as far as a reduction in density, more open space, more resource protection uses put on there, more of a neighborhood-style commercial that tends to make sense. There was a lot of, I'll say, negotiation that was going on with this application to get it to this point. And again, as you are familiar with the request, the applicant and Alexis and her team did a great job of summarizing it for you. It's a two-pronged request. Prong one is to amend the future land use map to redesignate this 204.5 acre site from the Lee County DRGR and wetlands land use categories to a City of Bonita Springs category known as Urban Fringe Community District and Resource Protection. And then to amend the text of the Urban Fringe Community District to be able to accommodate this project. I think Alexa summarized it pretty good when she said most of the text amendments are mainly just housekeeping items. updating the amount of acreages and open space and commercial allowances, FAR ratios, things like that. So there really wasn't too much consternation on the staff side as far as the proposal of the text amendments themselves. It's more of an overarching question of the policy decision and the appropriateness given the significant departure that this project could represent. So again, just like Alexis did, you have the citywide location map that shows you where this project is in conjunction to other areas of the city. The project is outlined in green, the project area, and as Alexis stated, the south side of Bonita Beach Road is pretty well developed. You don't see that same type of development pattern on the north side, be it whether that's Lee County or Bonita Springs. Most of that is due to the fact, like Alexis showed, is that a lot of that property there on the north side is under state control and water management control for conservation lands and wetlands and those types of uses. So the opportunity for large-scale development on the north side doesn't exist in a large scale like that because of all the protected lands that do tend to surround this type of property. But it does beg another question that we'll get into as we keep going. So as Alexis showed in her presentation, and it's also in your staff report, this is the current future land use map, if you will, that encompasses this property. And again, even though you have a portion of this property that is in the city and a portion that is not in the city, all of it still has its Lee County future land use designation. So the goal of their application is to unify the project by bringing it all into the city and giving it all a city land use designation. So essentially you're removing Lee County from this application, if you will. And this is what they're proposing as part of this application, to change it from the wetlands and DRGR of the Lee County designations to a city designation of urban fringe community and resource protection. So the development itself, the actual buildings, the vertical construction, would take place in the yellow areas. And the green areas would remain as open space, preserved lands, conservation areas, those types of uses. And it does, if you overlay that onto their master concept plan, it does match up. In terms of consistency with the Bonita plan, one of the things that we do is we have the applicant provide analysis based on several sections of the comprehensive plan. So it's not really a one-size-fits-all approach because no two applications are the same. So for an example, the sections that they analyzed with this request might be a little bit different than sections that were analyzed in prior requests. But I think the point that we wanted to demonstrate is that there's a lot of work that goes in to analyzing these projects and these proposals with various elements of the comprehensive plan, whether it's the future land use map, whether it's the transportation element, the conservation element, the housing element, the infrastructure elements. We have the applicant provide analysis for all of those areas for review. And it is in detail in your staff report what they had proposed, as well as what the staff response is to that analysis. And coming along with that was a very good point that was made with regards to a requirement of the applicant to provide what we call agency letters of availability. So whether it's from the Lee County School District, Fire, EMS, Bonita Springs Utilities, FPL, it's their responsibility to provide letters from those agencies demonstrating that there is capacity to serve this project should it go forward. That is a pretty vital point of the project overall because it helps the city understand, is there an underutilization, is there a lack of resources, or is everything readily available? And with this specific application, all of the agencies said that they did have sufficient capacity to serve this project if it were to go forward. So with that, you do have some findings of fact that are outlined towards the front of your staff report, if you will. It's a combination of 24 parcels over 204.5 acres. There is a companion zoning application that Alexis did speak about to effectuate this plan should it be able to go forward. Back in 2008, 114 acres of this 204 acres were brought into the city, but they maintained their their Lee County future land use designations. So there are also companion annexation applications to bring the remainder of the property into the city. So again, the goal seems to be to bring everything into the city, as opposed to have it be somewhat in the city and somewhat in Lee County. Sort of remove some of the confusion, ambiguity from it. And then also, the current future land use is still the Lee County DRGR and the Lee County wetlands future land use categories, and that's what they're proposing to change. There is a section of the property that does have that mining operation on it. Alexis is correct, those permits are still active, but the mine itself is not active right now. Mining activity is a permitted use in Lee County's DRGR, so they are operating within the bounds of what they're allowed to do. It would not be a permitted use in the city's DRGR, but that's not what the land use designation is on that property. But nevertheless, I think the impact of the mined areas is pretty clear as far as its relationship to what the city considers to be sensitive and environmental policies associated with DRGR. It doesn't quite match up in that regard to the applicant's point. If the future land use were to remain in place, you have a chart in your staff report that shows what the density would be should nothing change, and the density would be about 14 units total over that 204-acre swath of land. The proposed density overall that's associated with this comprehensive plan application was a maximum of 552 units, which equates to about 2.69 dwelling units per acre, which is within the range of what they're asking for in the urban fringe district. The plan development application, which is on the zoning side, is asking for much less than that. They're asking for 388 units to be associated with this project, which drops the density down to 1.89 dwelling units per acre. So in both instances, they are able to demonstrate consistency with the land use category that they're proposing of urban fringe community district as far as the density calculations go. And then just a few other additional things that were touched on. Yes, they do front Bonita Springs. Bonita Beach Road. It is a major arterial roadway that is fully constructed. They do have the companion zoning that also includes commercial uses, about 39,500 square feet of proposed commercial uses. The urban fringe district does allow for that to occur, and because of that, there is what we call trip capture that could be associated with that, where essentially you don't have to leave the project area for goods and services. You can do everything within the project area. So that's one of the benefits of having a mixed-use project, if you will, where you have a residential component and a commercial component as well. One thing that was not discussed outright in their presentation, but it is in their documentation, it's also in the staff report, is that the project is located within an environmental area known as the primary panther zone. And we'll get into that a little bit more in future slides as far as what that means. So this is a table that's also located within your staff report, and I think this is a key table to look at because it lays out what the existing zoning and the land use is for the surrounding properties. It also lays out the future land use map designation for the surrounding properties, what the density allowances are for the surrounding properties, and then what the current on-the-ground density is for the surrounding properties. And the reason why this is key is because in their initial application filings and in their narrative, one of the things that they were trying to demonstrate is that they are compatible with the surrounding area. And from the staff perspective, they're compatible with what's to the south, the Worthingtons, the Palmyras, the Village Walks, those already developed areas. If you look at compatibility as far as all sides of the project, based on what the density that's actually out there is and what's actually constructed, again, going back to the area location map, it would represent a departure in terms of what's around it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad project. It doesn't mean anything like that. It's just, it's a fact for consideration in terms of what we consider to be compatible versus what is being presented as compatible overall. So getting back to density, and you've heard a lot about density already, so I'm not going to belabor this point too much. The current Lee County DRGR policy is 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres, and the current Lee County wetlands future land use policy is 1 dwelling unit per 20 acres. So when you put all that together and you spread it out over what the project acreage is, that's where you get about 14 units total as what's allowed overall. And the proposed density is, for this application would be 2.69. For the plan development, it would be 1.89. So that is a bit of a shift, and that is something that should be considered. But again, ultimately, whether or not that's appropriate ends up being a policy decision for the city. Now, the applicant is correct in that if this change were to be effectuated, it would provide additional housing opportunities on the eastern portion of the city. And I agree with the applicant that it's a different buyer pool between this and downtown. And the reason why downtown is brought up with this is because the city has a strategic priority to essentially funnel its density to the downtown area. That's where they're looking to see the growth overall, just as a point of policy. They're not necessarily looking for growth on the outskirts of the city or on the edges of the city. So it has nothing to do with competing interests and buyer pools. It's more of a strategic decision of the city that, as of right now, their focus tends to be on increasing density for downtown and not in other parts of the city overall. Now, whether or not this sends a mixed message, if this were to be approved, again, that's a policy decision for the city overall. But staff does agree that it has nothing to do with taking buyers away from downtown. That doesn't seem to be what the concern would be from the city side. For traffic impacts, I'll keep it brief. You heard from Yuri, their traffic engineer. He was correct. It has direct access to Bonita Beach Road. There is reserve capacity still available for this project on Bonita Beach Road, as well as the other roadway segments that were analyzed in your traffic impact statement. A copy of that traffic impact statement was provided in your application backup, the big thick version that's online. And we don't dispute any of that as far as this project would not cause any level of service issues with the surrounding roadway network. Now, in the future, in terms of when you look at the long-range forecasts, many of these segments are going to fail. It's not a direct result of this project, but again, this goes back to policy decisions of city council where the infrastructure needs are versus where they tend to be focusing those needs right now. And again, as Yuri said, this is step one as far as the TIS analysis goes. Another one was provided as part of the zoning application. And when it gets time to go to development order, which is the engineering permits, that's when you get the really, really, really detailed, nuanced version of the report. So we still have 2 more, traffic studies to review if this were to go forward. As far as environmental goes, it is located in a primary panther zone overall, which tends to be an area where panther activity has been identified. Now, that doesn't mean panthers were present on this site, but in the overall zone area, there is panther population and they have been seen. The nearest observed human-panther interaction from this site was about 6 miles away, so not necessarily on this site per se, but that doesn't remove the fact or negate the fact that it is within primary panther zone. Now, they do have the Kiel Canal that separates this project from the zoned area to the north. Not to state the obvious, but panthers are good swimmers. They can get around the canal, so that's not to say that it's a complete cutoff point, but there are avenues and options that they could use to help diminish the ability for panther-human interactions. We typically explore that more on the zoning side and not at this level, so we may have some conditions written into the zoning that has to do with buffering requirements or fencing or just ways to deter those interactions from occurring. And as other environmental aspects, as you heard, yes, there is a mine on site. It's very clear. that the impacts of the mine are visible on that site. And then there are also relatively pristine areas on site as well. And that is where they do tend to want to have their resource protection portion of this future land use request, to try and preserve those in perpetuity, which does tend to make sense and is something that staff is in agreement with. For the stormwater, I will keep it relatively brief because most of this is done at the zoning stage overall and not as part of this comprehensive plan amendment. There was sort of a natural north-south flow of water in this area of the city. When the Kiel Canal was dug, it essentially bisected that and sort of forced the directions to go more easterly and westerly overall. So yes, they are somewhat hydrologically isolated, but the Kiel Canal is still a major connection point for both sides. So the flow is still occurring, it's just a flowing into the canal overall. So because of that, I don't know if it's true hydrological isolation, but the point's taken. They will be utilizing a series of lakes within the development should it occur. All the stormwater within the project itself would be routed to these lakes for treatment, and then they would be discharged at the appropriate amounts based on local, federal, and state policies for discharge. So as far as the staff opinion goes with this one overall, again, sort of refraining from an overall recommendation because it is a policy decision to be made by City Council, but you do have a density increase that they're proposing. There's no way around that. That doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean it's good. It's just a point of fact. There is a density increase that is associated with this project proposal. Staff doesn't agree overall that the proposal is compatible to all the surrounding land uses, and I think that was shown clearly in the table that was in your staff report, as well as just by looking at the map itself. Staff does agree that it is compatible with development on the south side of Bonita Beach Road, and staff does tend to agree that because of the mining activities, it's probably fair to say that a large portion of this site does not function in accordance with DRGR policies. That's probably a fair statement to make, and staff's fine making that. Whether or not that means that the urban fringe community district is the appropriate designation instead is the policy decision for consideration. And the other thing that staff didn't necessarily agree on overall was that leaving the property as is for 14 units would be a contributor to urban sprawl. In the black and white definition of urban sprawl, there's a portion of that that's true. Urban sprawl tends to be a term that's used for very rural development that's very automobile-centric. You have to drive a lot to get to places. That tends to be just sort of the Cliff Notes version of urban sprawl. You could also say, though, perhaps that asking for an increase in density as well as asking the city to bring in additional land area into the city that isn't right now in the city for the purposes of a largely residential project could also be considered a definition of sprawl. But again, staff agrees that the mining operation has altered a significant portion of the site. Staff agrees that the proposed resource protection future land use is appropriate over the areas of the higher quality wetlands and the soils and vegetation, and that again, overall, the appropriateness of a decision of this magnitude really is a policy decision to be made at the city administration level. So again, I promise to keep it brief and let the applicant do the heavy lifting as they have done. We're here if you have questions. I have some team on the phone as well, either for staff or the applicant.
Thank you. Questions?
When you say right now it's for 14 units, could those units be apartment buildings that would increase more people per se versus the housing, the 388?
No, so a unit is a unit is a unit. It doesn't matter if it's a multifamily building or if it's 14 single-family homes. It's a cap of 14 units. The zoning out there would largely allow just single-family. A huge chunk of the property is zoned agricultural, and the rest of it is for the mining activities, so it's zoned industrial plan development. There are no residential allowances tied to the IPD, the mining portion, but for the agricultural portion, single-family is the predominant housing type that's permitted.
So if another developer wanted to put apartment, they'd have to go through the zoning process.
Correct.
Mike, excuse me, has there been any review of that area by administration or by staff to change the designation from a DRGR prior to today?
There has not. When a portion of the property came in 2008, there would have been an opportunity at that time to also redesignate the future land use category. Back at that time, the city was still wrestling, I don't want to say wrestling, the city was still, I think, trying to get its head wrapped around the DRGR and the implications it had for the city. Back in 2008, the city was only 8 years old. We weren't even a teenager yet. We were still very young. And we were still requesting studies to be done to further explore that area. So in an effort to not just haphazardly assign a category to this property at that time, the city held off. Now, numerous studies have been done on the DRGR overall, but again, the city's DRGR and its DRGR policies is a little bit different than the Lee County policies. But no, there hasn't been anything directly associated with this property.
And we have gone through a full comprehensive review of a management plan, right? And there was no discussion at that time?
We've gone through several evaluations and appraisals of the comprehensive plan, which is the time to do those updates. And to date, the city has not directed staff to alter any of the DRGR policy language.
Thank you.
Where do we stand with the application for the Lee County portion to be with the DRGR to join together? Where does that process stand, and how long does it take?
So the annexation process is done completely within the city. It's a voluntary annexation that the applicants who own the property are petitioning that the city essentially take over the property in terms of ownership and boundaries go for within the city boundaries. A report is usually written and it goes to the city for review. There's multiple hearings on, I think there's 2 hearings in front of city council on the annexation overall. Those hearings have not yet been scheduled, but all the paperwork has been filed.
And Lee County generally would not oppose this?
They have not objected.
Thank you.
I guess I have one comment. I've been sitting on this board since the inception of the city, just about. And the DRGR thing has come up, and we have beaten it pretty much to death. Nobody knew what it was about at the time, and it seemed like it was just a blanket that had been thrown over an area because they didn't know what else to do with it. It has come up before this board, and I'm sure the city. I couldn't count the number of times. And it seems like we have just been chewing away at it, piece by piece, until I don't think there's going to be any of it left. And I don't know whether that it's this board's position that we should take it or leave it or allow development to continue. I am concerned. We're talking 388 dwelling units, so that's going to equate to about 776 vehicles. You can cut it any way you want it.
More than that, it's 2 point something.
You're going to be looking at least 2 per. So I question, they say Bonita Beach Road has the capacity. Try it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I will call the registered public speakers first, and then after that, all others who haven't submitted a slip will have an opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Jim Fitzpatrick, and he'll be followed by Francis Thomas.
Good morning. Again, my name is Jim Fitzpatrick, and I'm a resident of Bonita Springs, living in the Hunters Ridge development just east of I-75 along Bonita Beach Road. And also, for full disclosure purposes, I am a candidate for the city council seat of that district. As a resident, I'm here to express my concern regarding the future land use amendments that have been proposed by Seagate to build the 200-plus acre residential plan development along the north side of Bonita Beach Road. As been noted, we have 388 odd residential units, and it also addresses 39,500 square feet of commercial and retail space. Back in May of 2023, it was also cited that they were proposing 100,000 square feet of storage space to be developed on this parcel. I have a question following my comments as to whether that is still, in fact, part of their long-term plan for this site. I believe the current land use designations of density reduction, groundwater resource, wetlands, and resource protection for future use are appropriate and should not be amended as proposed. I'd like to thank staff for a wonderful job on the analysis that they have completed, and I'd like to share a few of their key comments where they've identified some of the items that Mike has referred to. But the key thing is there's 204 plus acres. 107.8 acres have been identified as wetlands. 85 acres are designated by Bonita Springs and Lee County as density reduction groundwater resource. And the remaining 11 acres are designated by the city as resource protection. As cited, this is a policy decision being made by City Council. But again, the leading comment made by the staff analysis was, while staff acknowledges there are some positive aspects to the requested amendments, this proposal contains a significant departure from the city and county DRGR policies. Regarding the resource protection portion of the document, I am concerned about the reference to adopting development on both upland areas and lower quality wetlands. If you read the definition of lower quality wetlands on Google or whatever site you want to go to, essentially lower wetlands can be restored with lack of activities such as the mining activities there. It is located within a panther habitat zone. And the one comment that I put back to the staff is that in policy 15.1.9 regarding wetlands, the staff refers on page 25 of the summary document of the applicant's failure to address the prohibition on impeding the flow of water through contiguous wetlands. I'm not against Bonita Springs' continued growth, but our growth needs to be controlled within the ordinances, guidelines, and policies established by our city and county. I'm concerned about the proposed development's impact on the retention and flow of stormwater, the existing wetlands, increased traffic on an already congested Bonita Beach Road feeding westbound flow to I-75 onto 41 onto our beaches. And lastly, the impact on the area's wildlife. In closing, the land north of Bonita Beach Road is a natural resource and has been designated so with its current land use designations. The staff of the city's planning division has done an outstanding job in the review of the proposed amendments, and I would encourage that you take the staff's responses seriously in your consideration of the next steps for this proposal. Thank you.
The next speaker is Francis Thomas, and he'll be followed by Lou Amato.
My name is Francis Thomas. I'm a resident of Bonita Springs. My biggest question to this project is the aquifer replenishment. It seems like the changes that they are making are going to affect the amount of water we have for the city of Bonita Springs. They are making proposals, but I don't see any concrete plans that show that, and I'm just going off what I see in nature. So that would be my biggest concern, is to make sure that the city of Bonita Springs has enough water for the future. And as far as the panther habitat, I'd like to know what the range was for panthers. I'm used to mountain lions have about 150-mile range. So if you saw one within 6.8 miles, I'll guarantee he walks through that area, especially during the wet season, because everything migrates out. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Lou Amato, and he'll be followed by Jeff Brown.
Good morning, my name is Lou Amato, and I'm a resident of Bonita Springs. Thank you for the opportunity for a quick address. I guess my point is that as I've been a resident of this area since 1974, I've seen little bites being taken over a period of time without the final straw being pulled. And I'm saying this is perhaps better than it could be, or better than we fear, but is it better? And I think that the time has come to make hard decisions in this community, and drawing the line at and respecting the wisdom of the initial designation and leaving it at that. Thank you.
Jeff Brown, and he'll be followed by Francis Brad Smith.
Yeah, Jeff Brown of Village Walk in Bonita Springs. I do appreciate the comments that the gentleman made about taking bits and pieces of the DRGR. I know when I moved here 17 years ago, we were always told that this is land that's going to be protected, and we don't have to worry about overdevelopment. And in these 17 years, especially in the last few, the overdevelopment on Bonita Beach Road is unbelievable, not to mention off of East Terry. I don't know where all this traffic is going to go. When I moved here in Village Walk, there was just a 2-lane road past Bonita Grand. Now it's a 4-lane. We're going to add 388 more homes between a mine and a trailer park. I'm sure somebody would buy that $1 million home. But we need to look at the traffic congestion on Bonita Beach Road, especially past Bonita Grand. And also, we need to protect the open land that we have. The gentleman from the Development Corporation Environmental said he saw no evidence of animals. Well, he obviously hasn't hiked back in the crew area along the canal. Well, I have seen scat. Now, I'm not an expert on it. I don't know if it's a bear or a panther, but I can attest to you that one time driving home at night on Bonita Grand Road, I almost hit a panther. So they're obviously in the area. So I hope you will reject this application and help preserve some more open space in Bonita Springs.
The final registered speaker is Francis Brad Smith.
Good morning. Good morning. Everybody's ignoring you all. My name is Brad Smith. I have been a resident of Bonita Springs for 15 years. In that time, I've seen we were an outpost at the east side of Palmyra, and now we're sort of in the middle. About 10 years ago, there was a study done of the traffic patterns on Bonita Beach Road, and the conclusion, we were involved with that as we are now with this. The conclusion that I recall was that in about 2012, Bonita Beach Road was deemed to be at capacity. And there was concern that traffic was already diverting on its own volition up Bonita Grand onto Terry, and concern, in fact, a conclusion was offered then that Terry would have to be widened to accommodate its soon-to-be function as a primary escape route from the traffic on Bonita Beach Road. The developments to the east of Palmyra have certainly increased traffic. I waited for 14 cars to pass this morning at 8:45 to get out of my drive, out of the entrance road to Palmyra onto Bonita Beach Road. And I am very concerned that the addition of 388 units will finally tip the scales and Bonita Beach Road will become just unusable. Thank you.
Are there any additional members of the public who would like to speak? Please come forth and state your name.
My name is Ray Dempsey. I live at Bonita National. Thank you all for serving as you do. I'm sure it's a thankless position. Thank you to Mr. Fitzpatrick for explaining what GR, it's lower density and groundwater reduction. Am I correct? Because I saw that up there and I guess I should know what it is, but I don't. Resource, okay, thank you. I noticed that we're waiting on the traffic studies. I'm not sure how we can vote on something without those traffic studies, because obviously these people are all concerned about that. And I think it's a huge, I don't know how zoning can vote. I don't know how anybody could vote without those traffic studies. The purple area, Alexa, that you were referring to up there, I couldn't understand. What was that up there on the graph? The yellow were the single-family homes, but what were the two purple areas?
Pink villas, that would be an attached villa.
So they would be multi-housing. Yeah,
Two
yeah,
units.
yeah, okay, all right, thank you very much. One concern for me, and I'd like, if this does go through, no mention of a cell tower, because anybody that lives down at my end of Bonita National, we have poor cell service. And any new development going in there, I would think would be looking at cells, and maybe that's part of what you could require or staff could require is we need cell service in there. I'm not going to belabor the point, but I'm going to leave you with two words. Cape Coral. We don't want to become it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to come forth to speak? Please come forth and state your name.
Good morning. Thank you for your patience. It was very, very
Your
interesting.
name, please?
Marcia Wilchfort. I live in Bonita Springs, and the traffic on Bonita Beach Road is awful. And they might do studies, but how are they going to do the studies? There's Pulte that's not completed yet. There's, I think it's called Metro? Midtown. That's not completed, and that's humongous with more and more housing. So in order to get an accurate picture study of the traffic, those two developments have to be taken into consideration. So if they do a study now, it's not accurate because there's these other two that are building at the moment. So that's what I have to say, and I thank you for your patience.
In the back, please come forth and state your name. Come forth to the lectern.
My name is Sig Hernandez, and I'm a resident of Bonita Springs. And I have two concerns. I noticed that part of the design of this development is to dump their drain water into the Kiel Canal. That's part of it. But the Kiel Canal feeds the Imperial River. We are residents that live near the Imperial River. We're already suffering from flooding, even when we have not necessarily an EN type of event, but a rainstorm. Okay, so I'm concerned about all this water being dumped into the Imperial River, because that's where it's going to end. That's my specific concern. The other is a general concern, okay? Why are we giving up this beautiful area, that is a part of our wetlands, for a bunch of millionaires that are going to come from out of state or some other part to buy $1 million houses? Okay, probably the average home in there is going to cost about $5 million. When we need affordable housing for our workers, that they struggle to be able to live in the city. Why is it that we're not requiring developers to construct housing that is affordable to our people? Okay, I'm tired of all these millionaires moving into this city when we have a much greater need than that in terms of housing. Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else who would like to come forth and speak? Okay.
Well, I guess we need a motion.
One more.
I guess.
Oh,
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bill Longcart. I live in Worthington Country Club, and I've been here since not 39, what is it? I gotta remember. 31 years, anyway. I served on the council between 2008 and 2016. I was involved with a wonderful group of people. We worked together, and we've had a lot of developers come forward. And if you're familiar with the mine, which is Terry Street, or if you didn't know, you should know that there's 700 homes that have now been approved because we turned it down on the town council years ago. They sued us, and we lost the case. That's 700 homes north of where the mine is. The Kiel Canal, okay, is talked about a lot. The Kiel Canal is, I don't know what the image is, but it's not what you think it is. In the summertime, or sometime during the year, there's no water in it at all. And it's only about so wide, and I was out there with the police department, and that's how I found out about that. The circumstances that we have now is we have wonderful places we live. And trying to maintain and keep the way it is without any more building. We don't need any more buildings. We've got adequate everything everywhere available to us. And we have to stop deciding to do new things in the wrong place. And I wasn't going to say anything today, but I'm very concerned for all of us. We have to watch the store because these kind of things happen. Nothing to say negative about the people that want to do what they want to do, but it's just going to add to the circumstances that we have, and it won't work because of the circumstances that we have. Thank you.
Please come forth.
Good morning. My name's Amy, and I live in Palmyra here in Bonita Springs. Thank you.
Amy, what is your last name, please?
Rocky.
Thank you.
My concern is also the traffic. If you do a study off-season, it's great getting down Bonita Beach. But during the season, you can't even get on the expressway. I mean, if you wanted to go to Fort Myers for a play, you have to plan ahead 2 hours just to get onto the expressway. And you've got building the one next to the racetrack going in. You've got Midtown, excuse me, Bonita. And then isn't there a facility going in or development going in right at the expressway? Like an apartment complex? How are you going to get all these people off of Bonita Beach and go downtown or go to the beach or go on the expressway? You really do need to think about the traffic or an access lane onto the expressway. It's really, really impacted us. And we've only been here in Bonita for 7 years, and this has just grown up crazy. So we'd appreciate if you really would look at the traffic study during season, not out of season. Thank you.
As you deliberate, you may ask questions of the applicant or of staff.
The applicant has a right to rebuttal, I believe, don't we?
City Attorney?
Yeah, I will allow the applicant the opportunity to answer any questions.
So questions may be asked of the applicant or staff.
The applicant would like to respond to some of the input that you've had. Let's talk about drainage. As the engineer has indicated, the project has an ERP, so the project has been reviewed and determined that it will have no adverse off-site impacts. So the concern that some of the folks have raised that it's not going to work, that has already been reviewed and determined. Traffic, as Mr. Baikal indicated, they submitted a traffic analysis. That traffic analysis is required to look at background traffic. It's required to look at historical growth rates, so they grow the traffic and they add the project traffic onto that. That traffic analysis is reviewed by the city's reviewer, who's not timid. He's very stringent in his review, and it has been determined that this comp plan amendment will not have an adverse impact. And as Mr. Baikal has indicated, the traffic will be analyzed at the zoning and at the DO stage. And when we talk about no adverse impact, the city has established level of service standards. We have to meet those level of service standards. And the testimony is that this plan amendment will meet those level of service standards. There's a question about we should just leave the DRGR the way it is. One of the things I would note, this is policy 1.4.5, which says that the properties in area with no programmed or existing facilities. There are, as you have heard, programmed and existing facilities. The DRGR designation wasn't done with any kind of analysis. It was done to settle a lawsuit with the Department of Community Affairs, and the two reasons or underpinnings for that no longer exist. Mining was included as a use because the county was concerned about getting sued because they had to provide a reasonable use of the property because they stripped density off of property. So if you don't have mining, and ag was a use. Ag used to be a use in this area. As I indicated earlier, Dilly Don Grant, Garshulo, Manly all had tomatoes on the south side of the road where most of these folks live. Obviously, tomato industry's gone. As of last week, Gulf Citrus shut down. Citrus industry's gone. So ag is not a viable use of the property. 1 per 10 is not a reasonable use of the property. So if we're going to bring the property into a city category, the question is, as Mike Fionn noted, it's a policy decision. What is the appropriate land use category in the city's list of land use categories? This property, as the expert testimony has demonstrated, doesn't meet the definition and criteria of the DRGR. The development will improve the environmental quality of the site. It will improve surface and groundwater resources. The concern about, do we have enough water? Yes, that's the point of the Lower West Coast Water Supply Plan, to ensure that everyone in Southwest Florida has enough water. I'm going to ask Alexis to address compatibility and whether or not this is really a significant departure.
Again, Alexis Crespo with RVI. I was a little surprised with some of the discussion on compatibility. Certainly, our project being a master plan, predominantly residential community, it mirrors, at a much lower density albeit, but mirrors what's to the south of the road. To the north of the road, to our west, if you move from the Bonita Grand intersection east to our site, those lands are all within Lee County. You have, well, the Midtown just immediately to the west of Bonita Grand is in the city. It's going to be a master plan mixed-use project with apartments and entertainment restaurants. Then you've got racetrack within Lee County, a development. Further east of that, you have the new Pulte Townhome community under construction. Further east of that, you have a pending commercial plan development in Lee County for commercial uses. And then further east of that, you have a mobile home park, an RV park, and some kind of dilapidated industrial warehouse. And then you have our site. So I would submit that the north side of Bonita Beach Road is not pristine and undeveloped. To our west, it is entirely and fairly haphazardly developed, I would say. Lee County has shown they will permit development within this area through those approvals that are coming out of the ground. So I would submit that our master plan community at the lower density than what's to our south, lower density than what's being developed to our west, is a good bookend and endpoint for development on this corridor and compatible with both the north and south sides of the roadway. When you look at our north and our east, we do abut public conservation lands. You can see through projects throughout Southwest Florida that development can interface and transition to public conservation lands through good design. Our design has 130 foot of preserve and buffer to the north, and our plan has 40-foot wide buffer with opaque screening along the eastern boundary to provide the bugs and bunnies, if you will, with noise mitigation, light mitigation, and ample space between our development footprint and their preserve lands. The last point I'll touch on is the majority of speakers live in Palmyra, Village Walk, etc. All those properties were DRGR, as we showed you. All those properties, so folks in this room live in communities that were converted out of DRGR, and they enjoy those communities. I think they believe they are well planned. I think they believe they're in the right place in the development footprint of Southwest Florida. So I would submit this is not a sweeping policy change. And if you do want to, consider the impact of that, which certainly you should, I would submit we are the only DRGR on Bonita Beach Road east of Bonita Grand, and we are not even city DRGR, we are county DRGR. So this is not land that was placed in DRGR by the city and would be undoing a policy decision such as this. It's an isolated scrap of Lee County DRGR with urban infrastructure to serve it. We are not in the cluster, the large swath of DRGR that the city has protected through various actions over the years following incorporation. So I would submit that approving this application does not create a policy change that would impact the stance on those other DRGR areas. Those are different geographically from an infrastructure standpoint, from an environmental standpoint. So we would respectfully request you consider the very site-specific nature of our request and some of the history as well as the data and analysis with our application. Thank you.
I think that's it.
I'm going to refer to you here to.
So again, at this time, your role here is to give a recommendation to the city council, who is ultimately the policy decision maker on this issue. Now, because it is their request is for a new comprehensive plan amendment, your recommendation is really whether or not this amendment fits with the remainder of the comprehensive plan, and if there's any guidance you wish to, relay on to the city council. I mean, that's essentially what it is. You're not approving or denying, you're making a recommendation, and you're trying to take into account all the issues that have been raised today.
Well, I guess I'm asking for guidance. We have to have a motion, and somebody is going to.
You would need either a motion to approve or a motion to recommend denial. If you're making a recommendation to deny the amendment, you would need to articulate what the basis of that denial is relying on.
Can I just ask a question? When the studies were done of like where the water will go, wherever, was Midtown already, was that taken into consideration? Were the townhomes taken into consideration? Were the homes on Terry Street that are being built taken into consideration? Do you know?
In regards to traffic or drainage?
Both.
Yes, I don't want to speak for the engineer, but yes, when they do an analysis, they have to look at the entire basin, and you can't discharge more water in a developed state than you do in an undeveloped state, and they do look at the receiving body, so yes, they have to take all that into account. Now, what happens is that what will happen if you have problems downstream is they will reduce the rate and amount of water that you can discharge. So that was reviewed and evaluated when the engineers went through the process with South Florida. When it comes to traffic, yes, they do look at that. The city has had what they call vested trips, which are all the trips that were generated by sections 1, 2, and 3 where these folks live, because they're originally approved for more units than what are actually happening on the ground. So in the city, when they look at Bonita Beach Road, they look at the vested trips, they look at historical growth rates. Let's say Bonita Beach Road, the growth rate's 5% a year. I'm just picking a number. So they have to factor in whatever that annual growth rate is, add that on. And yes, they look at where we are, what the trips are today. So you look at trips, you look at the historic growth rate, and you add that in, and you look at vested trips, and then you add your trips. So when the traffic consultant goes through that, all of the trips are evaluated, and they look at what they call the K100 factor. So they look at the 100th peak hour. I think I got that right. Yuri said yes. So they look at the 100th basically busiest hour, and that's what you analyze. So for the folks who think we're just looking at traffic during the summer, no, it's looking at peak season.
More specifically, when the study was done, was it already known that Midtown was being built, that the townhomes were being built, and the homes on Terry?
Yeah.
That's kind of my question.
Yes, because those are known quantities, and the development order had already been issued, so we knew what the trip generation was from that.
Okay.
And just to lay a little additional predicate on, remember, this parcel is partially within the city and partially within the county. So part of I believe what I heard was that the discussion point is whether, and you don't have to necessarily make your recommendation predicated on the proposal that was presented. You could recommend that the presentation or the proposal be changed to accommodate different factors as well. But is this property will eventually develop, will it develop half with Lee County entitlements and half in the city? Because there's always the possibility, as it was discussed in other properties previous the city council has dealt with, that Lee County may approve things that the city wouldn't approve, and so that's a consideration to recommend as well, if you want to add additional complexity into your life.
Well, I'm going to ask a question that everybody's going to hate. Is this the right time to even have this vote until we have more information on this whole thing coming together as one package?
Well, so the issue of whether or not the property will be annexed is dependent on whether or not the policy gets approved. So, the applicant is requesting the annexation in consideration of the comp plan amendment. If the comp plan amendment doesn't get approved, they won't move forward with an annexation. At the end of the day, these things will all go together. They won't all be in front of you, because the annexation is also just a city council alone consideration.
Okay, well, as a panel up here, we're going to need a motion for something.
I have one more question. So can a developer, whether it's this one or another one, move forward with development on county property? Yeah. And we would have no stance, no say?
Correct. It may not be as cohesive
right.
a project, but they can certainly bifurcate the project and develop it with Lee County.
And like those townhomes by the racetrack, that was county property?
Yes.
They're saying yes. I don't
okay.
reference this.
For the record, Neil Montgomery, yes, I worked on that project. Yes, it's in the county.
Okay.
Okay, I'm all ears.
I'd like to make a motion that the proposal.
I think you need to talk into the mic.
Speak in the microphone.
I'd like to make a motion that the proposal to change the the description of that property from its current legal status as DRGR and groundwater protection be rejected. Reason being,
Please hold the applause.
the reason being, traffic, density, the water issues, whether it be aquifer, whether it be, that parcel is part of a retention also, that this would change. We're told we need reasons, I'm giving you reasons. Another reason is the community, Bonita Springs City, Bonita Springs needs a lot of things. We've done a lot, we've made a lot of progress over many years to create a community that has very mixed residential properties, very mixed population, and what the city needs should be paramount.
Can I interrupt? And we need a second to this and then have the discussion.
Okay, well, I'm making my motion.
Okay.
We were told that we need to have a reason, and these are the reasons. I don't believe the city needs, I don't believe this would serve the city. I think it would serve others, and that's okay. However, we do have properties that are zoned properly that can be developed. To change this property with all the negatives involved, I am not in agreement with. So I make a motion that we reject.
I need a second to that motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion on this motion?
I agree with what was said. I think that it is a major change on what is existing in our comprehensive plan. And also there are other areas that do not require, major zoning changes or designation changes that could be developed. And when you look at the amount of effort and work that's gone into our comprehensive management plans and the reviews over the last, even though I haven't been on this board, but over the last several years that have taken place, this has not been one of those areas that have even been discussed or wished to be changed. So I would concur wholeheartedly.
I would defer to the clerk to do a roll call vote.
Motion made by Mr. Lombardo, seconded by Mr. Colapietro. Mr. Colapietro, how do you vote?
Nay.
Mr. Lowen? No.
No.
Okay, we are voting, let's make sure we understand.
Voting to deny.
Oh, okay.
The motion was to deny.
Right, so we are voting on, how do you vote on the motion?
A is to support the motion. Nay is to deny the motion.
Aye.
Mr. Lowen?
Aye.
Mr. Doogie?
Aye.
Mr. Townsend?
Aye.
Mr. Lombardo?
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Next item on the agenda is an update on an agenda item, the 2023 evaluation and appraisal review amendments from the LP meeting held on February 22nd, 2024. You want to take a short recess?
Perhaps we should take a 2-minute recess and let people leave the... Ladies and gentlemen, please quietly leave the council chambers. There's still some unfinished business.
Exactly what I can tell you. Yeah. We're gonna sue and we're gonna lose.
Sure, I'm gonna have to write it out, but I could talk to you after, because they're gonna continue the meeting now.
Not a one.
What, write down your phone.
Oh, shit, no. And the one that cost the most money was that frickin' rock put out on
Gentlemen, let's just wait on further discussion.
Yeah, remember, you're still covered by
Yeah.
sunshine. So.
I think we can go forward with the meeting, right? No, I think we can go forward.
Okay, this is for an update. Could you please be seated, please?
Throw the hammer. Good job.
Thank you. This is for an update on an agenda item 2023 evaluation and appraisal review amendments from the February 22nd, 2024 meeting. You have the floor.
Good morning. For the record, Jacqueline Genson with Community Development. We have received all comments from the State Land Planning Agency, and I'm happy to report that the EAR-based amendments, which are, again, the evaluation and appraisal review amendments that were submitted to the state, came back with no comments from the state or the reviewing agencies. The optional amendments that were also transmitted to the state, it came back with a advisory comment, which, in discussion with Dr. Banyan, is going to be a very easy fix. So we have a meeting with her today, and they should be shortly scheduled for adoption, hopefully in July or August.
Will there be any further action required by the board, by this board?
There's a slight the slight modification is, in my opinion, not circumstantial or substantial enough to bring it back to the board, but if that's your pleasure, I can discuss that with Dr. Banyan and the city attorney to see if that's necessary, but I think we're okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We also need an approval of the minutes from the February 22nd, 2024 LPA meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Nay.
No, these are the revised.
No, there's a reason.
Oh.
Does everybody have the revised?
Did everyone receive a copy of the revised meeting minutes that I had sent?
I think we
I've
all-
got copies.
We did not get, okay. I
Okay,
thought
I've
we
got
all
copies
had-
here if you'd like. In effect, if you'd like to table this till the next meeting, that'd be fine, but
Well, if everybody's seen the revised, then I make the motion to approve the minutes as revised.
I thought we had all been given a copy of the revised. I had one.
pandemonium.
Yep, got it.
Is everyone aware of what was revised?
I was just gonna ask that.
so, there was a comment, I spoke to Mr. Lombardo yesterday, and there was a comment that was incorrectly attributed to him, or incorrectly attributed to him, just worded in the wrong way. I went back and I reviewed my minutes, I reviewed the recording and corrected what was stated. So it is on the, do we have it? It's on page 2. And it's halfway down the page.
The inefficiencies, right?
Board Member Lombardo, yes, inefficiency.
Does that change the motion, or does that change anybody's vote?
Well,
No.
Change me to yay.
Okay, changes him to yea. Now everybody's seen.
okay then, all right.
It's the cleanest way to do that.
5-0 in approval, to approve, thank you. And then I have one quick announcement I'd like to make. So I received a phone call from Chairman Jeff Maturo, and he has some family obligations. He is going to have to step down as the chairman of the LPA. He is not resigning, but he does feel the need to step down as the chairman. So, in keeping with standard protocol, what I will do is I'm going to recommend to the mayor and city council that the vice chair, Steve Lohan, be named the chairman. So that means that at the next meeting, you will be selecting a new vice chairman. So start thinking about nominations, and then we'll take nominations and have a selection for vice chairman at your next meeting.
Either nominations or excuses, right?
And I have no further announcements.
I'm glad you can't give me any more bad news. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.